Well, LSU's handing out quarterback offers like it's the Oprah Winfrey show, and so we're going to talk about all these new 2027 offers going out over the past few days. This is Louisiana versus all y'all's Recruit That Boot. I'm Jared Roser. He's Sam Spiegelman, and it's a fun time. One we kind of said a couple weeks ago should be on the immediate horizon. What's yeah? Do you need to pull out the stopwatch again? What's going on, Sam?
Yeah, I mean, we've been saying, when is Coach Sloan going to be sending out offers to some of these 2027 quarterbacks that you and I are talking about week in and week out as some of the best overall players in the state of Louisiana to kick off the opening month of the prep season. And little did we know, we saw Coach Sloan amongst the crowd at the chapel, as I call it,
Well,
or
that's what it's called.
depends. Ask Josh what he calls it. And then, within a couple hours of that, you see the first 5 offers for Coach Sloan and the LSU Tigers of 2027 QBs being thrown out, and they are some of the best quarterbacks in America, as expected. But yeah, it fits the calendar. It's October 1st, and it fits the natural progression of our podcast because we've been talking about these guys, and we now see what the flagship university is viewing as their board for the 2027 class.
For folks to understand what the hell we're talking about, our buddy Josh Preston had some issues trying to find Dunham's off-campus football field behind the chapel on Segan on Thursday night when we were all in attendance to watch Elijah Haven's big game against Ascension Catholic, including the game-winning touchdown run late that he popped to the outside, got up the sideline for whatever ended up being 65, 70 yards. It is, again, an off-campus stadium, and so Josh ended up in a neighborhood kind of riding around looking for it for a while. I'm confident that Joe Sloan had no trouble finding the stadium. He was over there, as you mentioned, kind of taking it in, and then, honestly, might have been Elijah's most up and down or least efficient game that he's had thus far this season, which is not saying a lot because he's had a fantastic start to the season. And so the bar is pretty high to keep up with what he's been doing. But Elijah ends up being the first guy on Friday because they played Thursday. He picks up the offer. And then over the course of the weekend, it's 5 guys from 4 different states. Peyton Houston from Evangel wakes up to the offer, still wiping the sleep out of his eyes on Saturday morning. Colton Nussmeier, Garrett Nussmeier's little brother out there at Marcus High in Texas, picks up an offer. Trey Taylor up in Illinois, and then Trent Seaborn out in Alabama, Thompson High, wrapping up the weekend on Sunday night. And as you mentioned, this is kind of the timeline we anticipated, 4 games into their sophomore season, going into the LSU bye and all those things. And all of these guys have been guys that have a really strong relationship already with Coach Sloan and with this program. They've all been on campus a ton. So while the offers are new, I mean, you can speak more to the fact that these relationships are really long-standing with all these guys that had been kind of patiently waiting for this week, essentially.
These are the guys that Coach Sloan had his eyes glued on just a couple of weeks ago over the summer. And again, this is who he was dialed in on from the spring. This is where he was in the spring. He was at the spring game for Trey Taylor. He was at Elijah's spring game. He obviously worked out all those guys, including Seaborn and Pop and Nussmeier in over the summer at Friday Night Lights of all places, getting to work, see Bryce Underwood and then pass the torch to those 2027s. And we were a little bit surprised that Joe did not offer after Friday Night Lights just to some of those quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
But he wanted to be very meticulous about how he went about this. So their first 4 games of their sophomore seasons, for Pop, the first 4 games of his prep varsity starting career, he's the leader in total yardage in Louisiana, Jared. I don't know if you knew that. So I would say a pretty decent start to Pop's career over there at Evangel. You talked about Elijah's up and down game, but what you saw, that's why you go and see these quarterbacks live, is you need to see everything besides the highlights. And, some of the things that I learned about Elijah, how well he maneuvers within the pocket. Not only we know that he can buy time with these design rollouts that allow him to look downfield and make his decision, but when he stands in the pocket at 6'5" and 190 pounds, he's ducking defenders, standing tall and delivering strikes. So that was an aspect of his game that I was not familiar with. this is why you go see these elite quarterbacks in person. And the best thing about it, they're all sophomores. I've gotten to see Trent Seaborn. He operates a very explosive offense over there at Alabaster. Thompson. We've heard great things about Trey Taylor up there in I believe Illinois, like you said. The best thing is, especially speaking on Elijah, who we just saw in person, is you see the potential, you see the upside, and there's plenty of room to grow for all of these quarterbacks to continue to take steps and leaps. And the best thing is always seeing the progression. And I think for Elijah's case, since we just saw him, the progression from OT7, the progression from LSU's Friday Night Lights, and now an in-game evaluation beating up a very talented team, a defense that was intent to slow him down and not let him be the hero. And he ended up being the hero in the end. And you can make really compelling cases about the upside of all of these quarterbacks we mentioned.
Yeah, Trey's up there in Illinois, maybe an hour north of Chicago. He's a little bit north of Chicago up there. And if folks want to, I talked to him on Sunday and told him, look, when I post this on Louisiana versus all y'all, you're going to be one of the guys that maybe the fans here know less about. So let's kind of introduce you to some folks here. But if folks do want to learn a little bit more about Trey Taylor, there's a 10 or 11 minute interview up with him on the channel, as well as, now a couple of interviews with Elijah in the last week, the interview with Pop talking about the offer. And so just get a chance to know some of these guys. There's an interview with Garrett Nussmeier where he talks about Colton Nussmeier a little bit post game after that big South Alabama win this weekend for LSU. But I mean, you mentioned with Elijah some ups and downs and whatnot, but watching him work through that and still, stay the course and carry that team, be the leader that team needed to come out of a tough game with a physical opponent and make plays when they really needed them. You talk about him being able to kind of maneuver around and duck around some pressure at times. When he got outside, we talked about the speed up the sideline. He also wasn't shy about bowling over some guys and using that size as a physical runner for some extra yards at spots when he needed to get to the chains and things like that. And so we see, obviously we're talking a lot about Elijah because he's the guy we just saw last week, but Pop's been electric. People were throwing Kyler Murray comparisons around in the Jamboree. And I said, let's calm down on Jamboree week. But I mean, you've seen some of that, just that flash that he has when he's able to use his legs on top of all the big passing numbers he's putting up. And so there's a lot to be excited about for Louisiana's 2027 quarterback class, and right now for the potential of this 2027 quarterback class for LSU. Because I really think they get at least one of these first five guys. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, but this is kind of the next phase of recruiting these guys. And it's going to be another couple years before they end up on campus, but exciting for LSU fans to know, okay, these are guys we need to be watching for the next 2.5 years of high school.
Totally. So to follow through on Elijah, he creates these big splash plays downfield, and he does that consistently. He has a cannon for an arm, and at 6'5", 190 pounds, you see his physicality, his willingness and ability to take over games and be the best player on the field. And we're talking about the Dunham School playing in 2A in Louisiana. Well, this is the same conversation we had about Arch. He should be the best player on the field. So to see it in these glimpses, this is all you're looking for. He completely dominated in the second half of that game, and really in the fourth quarter, with his arm, with his legs, whatever the defense was giving. Eli was composed. I was really impressed by his composure, his poise, and his ability, obviously, to get the job done in such thrilling fashion. You could see he was pretty stoked after that decisive touchdown afterwards, which you got to remember, these guys are 15 and 16 years old. And this is what Friday nights, or in this case, Thursday nights, are all about. And on Pop, we're talking about his opening test is a Neville defense that a lot of people are now saying Neville has the best defense in the state, a team that is expected to now be in the Superdome in a couple of weeks. Pop's played against a couple of tough defenses, and remember, these are his first 4 starts, and he has been electric. Statistically, sure, of course, that's great. I'm not really a big stats guy. I like to throw them out when I can. I love to note that he is the Louisiana leader in total yardage, but what I've seen, he's wildly efficient. You keep talking about getting hit, knocked over and over by this Neville defense, and keeps standing up to the test. And that's what that's what we've wanted to see from Pop. His work ethic, his drive, the way he steps up in these moments, the way he's attacked this moment to be ready for his sophomore season. it's been tangible, and you can see it. The ball comes out of his hands at a different pace. He has a cannon for an arm himself, and we've seen him be more mobile than I actually anticipated. I think the Kyler Murray comparisons are apt. I think that's a game it's super remarkable to his. And the crazy thing is, he's like Elijah. He's not doing this with 4 and 5 star receivers around him. He's giving opportunities to the athletes around him and taking advantage. But he is the central force of this offense, and you can see that from a mile away. And this is just his first 4 starts. I'm even more excited to see what he does on the back end of this season, going into what should be his first playoff run. And I can't think of a sophomore who's going to be as focused for their sophomore playoff run like Pop will be.
And look, he's got some weapons around him at the high school level. He's got some speed around him, but I mean, to your point, it's not a lot of 4 and 5 star guys right now, and he's also spreading the ball around to all of them. It seems like a different guy each week that's having a huge game up there at Evangel. All these guys too. Something that stands out. You mentioned the excitement of, a 15 or 16-year-old making a huge play like Elijah's touchdown run late in that Dunham Ascension Catholic game. All these guys, it's almost tough to remember sometimes that they're just sophomores because of the way they carry themselves, because they all carry themselves with a lot of maturity, which I think is a big piece of their overall package that Coach Sloan and company really like about them in terms of just their handle on not only the game, but their handle on their role as a leader of their team and kind of what's expected of them outside of just being really physically talented young guys, but what goes into being a quarterback for a team.
Yeah, you talked. I mean, we tried to touch on all the takeaways that I wrote about and discussed on Elijah, but one of the first things I mentioned was the command that he has of this offense. I mean, not to harp it, but the best quarterbacks have all done this. They've all had this incredible grip on their offense, on the moments, on the situations. And I think both of these quarterbacks, respectively, have stepped up to that challenge. They're different challenges for Elijah. Elijah's in his second year. He's already the best that has ever come through Dunham at his position. He has already been pronounced as a 5-star quarterback by most, if not all, websites. And now the pressure is on him to play that way each and every week, which for a sophomore quarterback at 15 years old, that's a lot of pressure. And now, he already had big time offers from Florida and Ole Miss and you name it, has already offered. Now he has LSU in his back pocket. People are going to expect the world every time they see Elijah, but his job isn't to blow up the stat sheet every single week. It's to win games for the Dunham school. And that's, I think, what he's focused on. I think his maturity is extraordinary for his age. And I think you could say the same thing about Pop. His challenge was different. A lot of people have been talking about his upside before he played a meaningful down of football. We've seen it in the camp settings, and we create these expectations. You and I have talked about it in this podcast. We've talked about it privately. We've talked about it with his coaches. We've talked about it with his members of his family. And the expectations have been huge, and he stepped in seamlessly. And I mean, I think it's fair to say he's living up to all of those expectations. He, again, not to say it for a third time, but he is leading the state in yardage. He is putting the offense on his back. He has good players around him, but they are made exponentially better by his presence. He has great vision of the field. He is just a devout worker, and with outstanding physical traits for the quarterback position. We've talked about his size and yada yada, his production or the lack. And now that's all by the wayside because he looks the part, he's playing the part, and now it's only up from here for both of these young prospects.
When you mention leading the state in total yardage,
did I say that yet?
Do you get paid per reference to that? Is that like a quarter a reference or dollar? Do you make $1 a reference? How does this work?
Well, you'll recall Coach Denny only responded to my text that we were leaving Evangel on that lovely, faithful Friday morning, and that's because I'm in with the Evangel Eagles. Okay, you and Jarrett are on the outside, and I don't know.
I think it was the other way. I think because I have the text response from that day, so I think I'm in.
Okay. I'm scrap this episode. Let's restart it.
We talk about expectations. We've talked primarily and rightfully so right now on the Louisiana versus OL channel about the two Louisiana natives. But Colton Nussmeier, just by way of the Nussmeier name, the dad, the former NFL quarterback, the older brother who's currently, I mean, fresh off of a 400-yard game in Tiger Stadium. And so he's garnering a lot of attention in a hurry from LSU fans that are figuring out, oh, shoot, Garrett's got a little brother who's apparently LSU good. But you being out there in Texas, you certainly know him as well as any of these guys. When we talk about out of state guys, Colton is folks will realize quickly, he's a lefty. He's also bigger right now than Garrett was at that point. Garrett was telling me this summer that he is spinning it better than Garrett says that he was at that age. Texting with Colton earlier today, he was joking about how he's got a little bit more to his run game and how he was messing with Garrett on that second touchdown run that Garrett was still looking slow. And so there's some aspects to Colton's game that I think if fans just know, okay, this is Garrett's little brother, Colton is a little bit different of a player. There's some similarities to like, but what have you seen from Colton and what do fans need to know about who he is as his own young quarterback?
Yeah, Garrett has been telling me about Colton about this time last year to keep an eye on him, and he said it then, and he reiterated it when we saw him over the summer. He thinks Colton is going to be better than him, and as someone who had Garrett Nussmeier in the top 100 of the Rivals 250, had him as a top 10 quarterback in his respective recruiting class. I thought I was pretty high on Garrett Nussmeier. I thought he was he was Brett Favre like. He was a gunslinger. He saw the field really well and was able to attack. He was aggressive, loved to create big plays, and loved to buy time and attack.
He was Brett Favre like in all the right on the field ways.
Correct, and all the on the field good ways. If you remember him from strictly the Green Bay days. But Colton, yes, the first thing I was going to say that he is a lefty, which I am slowly getting used to. I've had to get used to it with Deuce Knight. I'm getting used to it with Colton Nussmeier, and I had a chance to see Colton in the Texas State 7-on-7s this year with Marcus Flowermount, and his older brother is a pretty good evaluator of talent. I love the way that Colton attacks in the middle of the field, outside the numbers. I think that he's a really advanced passer. I mean, Garrett was really advanced, being able to hit short, intermediate, and deep passes while he was in high school, and he played a full 4 years or 3 years at Marcus Flowermount. But Colton is doing so, and he's like just going into this is like breakout season. The fact that he's Doug Nussmeier's son, the son of a coach, it's super cliche to say, but both of these quarterbacks have just been raised in a football setting where this has come so naturally to them. They're natural throwers of the football, which is again another cliche to say, but Little Nuss led a comeback in, like, you're very familiar with the 7-on-7 setting with, less than a minute and a half on the clock. He was calm, cool, in 98-degree heat, and he's slinging it all over the field. And I believe last Friday night for Flowermount, he had a big run that ended up being the difference in their big rivalry game against Louisville. So yeah, he's mobile. He's got a big arm, but he can make throws at all different levels of the field. And the fact that it's coming out of a southpaw, it doesn't bother me one bit. I think he is one of the more fluid passers. I thought at LSU he really shined, attacking vertically and outbreaking routes. And I think that as he gets more familiar and continues to get coached up and more experience, we're going to see him maybe get as aggressive. I think he's a little bit more calculated than Garrett was, but I think he has that aggressiveness in him to take those big shots and make some plays with his mobility as well.
To be clear, I'm also very comfortable with the fact that Colton is a left-handed quarterback.
Let the record show we are pro lefties on this podcast.
Much like the Roser siblings, Jarrett and Josh, who my younger brother is a lefty. All love for the left-handed younger brothers.
Absolutely.
So we've talked a ton about quarterbacks. Let's talk a little bit about a couple of older guys, one who protects quarterbacks, one who is trying to snatch every pass away from opposing quarterbacks. And I guess let's start with the current LSU commit, the 2025 standout from out there in Mississippi, Tyler Miller, that you just had a chance to see this weekend. You kind of double dipped across state lines, seeing Elijah and company on Thursday, and then went out to Laurel, Mississippi, and saw Tyler Miller. What were your takeaways on him in terms of performance, as well as where LSU stands for a guy in Mississippi that the SEC programs in Mississippi are going to continue knocking on the door and hoping to keep him in state?
Yeah, somebody asked where I was on Friday, and I just said the Southeast. That's just my new answer. Um, Tyler Miller, really impressive in person. 6'6", 320 or so pounds, very broad chested, filled out frame, very nimble, light on his feet. Rolled his leg on the opening play of this game against a stout Oak Grove defensive front. But listen, the first thing I was impressed with, I thought my night was over in evaluating this tackle who, from tape, from his measurements, would put him among one of in the tier one of offensive tackles in the country with 35-inch arms, and this like 6'6", 320-pound frame. He gets right back in, and going over the film, watching him live, he was exceptional. I mean, playing with limited mobility, he was reaching the second level of his blocks in the run game. He was still mulling guys over as a run blocker, and then in pass protection, even though again he's dealing with a rolled left leg, he's still dropping back very quickly in his pass sets. He's able to handle power rushers pretty easily and just kind of bounce them off. And lost a couple of speed rushers. I kind of give the injury the benefit of the doubt there. But he's super long, he's super lean, and he's super agile for a 6'6", 320+ pounder. I think he's a stock up sort of player. I'm really anxious to hopefully get another look at him healthy in the Alabama-Mississippi game. But overall, I still was impressed. I mean, I think a lot of kids, they were losing by multiple touchdowns, would have sat out that game, or at least checked themselves out once it started to get ugly in the end of the second quarter. I thought he got better as the game went on, and he ended up playing until the final series on offense into that fourth quarter, which I think says a lot about kids that are making NIL deals and are playing in their senior seasons. From a recruiting standpoint, I do feel good long term about LSU's chances of holding on to Tyler Miller. Brad Davis is exceptional at what he does, and not only evaluating offensive linemen but building these relationships, especially in the quietest of little towns like there in Laurel, Mississippi. That's like a Brad Davis, gift package to be out there and recruiting that part of the SIP. But Ole Miss has started to push really hard this fall. Mississippi State was at one point the finalist next to LSU when he committed to the Tigers. Mississippi State, of course, got Charles Cross from Laurel High School not so long ago, ended up being a first-round pick for the Seattle Seahawks. And State and Coach Levy are definitely pushing that narrative. Lane Kiffin is also pushing super hard. Ole Miss is obviously a top 10 team, and they'd love to keep him home and play for that explosive offense. He's going to visit both Starkville and Oxford. He's also going to get back to Baton Rouge. But I think from talking to people involved in this recruitment that are pretty familiar with Tyler, there's a pretty strong sense that it's going to be hard to beat out not only Coach Brad, but also Coach Kelly has been really involved down this stretch in this recruitment with not only Tyler, but also his mom. So I feel pretty good, as October 1st is here, about where the Tigers sit long term with him.
Certainly good to hear. I know LSU fans will be excited to hear that. And some good news for Tulane early this week, a guy that I'll see this week in Opelousas cornerback, Landon Hammond. I thought I was going to see him a couple weeks ago against Carr, and then the storm messed up the schedule that week. And so now I'll get a chance to see him against Zachary, that talented Opelousas team coming to the Baton Rouge area to face the Zachary Broncos. Landon committed Monday night to Tulane, and he's a guy that for a long time now, I mean, going back to at least earlier this year, if not, during the course of last year, the Green Wave staff eyed as one of the top couple of cornerbacks in state in this class. And so a guy that had picked up at different points in his recruiting process some Power 4 offers ends up being now a Tulane commit, and someone that I think Green Wave fans should be extremely excited about, being another potential steal to keep in state despite some overtures from out-of-state programs.
We spent a lot of time on this podcast talking about the running backs in this current 2025 cycle and how deep of a group that is. And at the end of the season, we're going to look back and we're going to say, who is the best and how deep and talented is this crop. And I think the same can be said about the cornerbacks in this 2025 class, guys like Aiden Anding and Jacob Bradford. And also down the list, the guys like Landon Hammond, who kind of emerged last year for that state championship winning Opelousas squad, had the eyes of Corey Raymond at one point, who wanted to get him to camp. He has great length. He's a skinny kid, and plenty of room to fill out his frame. But in terms of length and being a natural athlete at the cornerback or safety position, depending on what school you spoke to, he's versatile enough where he's at least getting looks, but he's big, he's long, he moves extremely well. And he's he's a little bit raw, but those guys with the right coaching turn into fantastic ball players. That length you cannot teach when you're in coverage, and that ball skills to make plays like Landon has showed time and time again. I think it's another great get for Coach McCleskey and Coach Summerall at Tulane last week. They picked up the speedy cornerback commitment out of
say his last name.
Nope. Out of Hewitt Trustville, who has NFL ties. So you have speed, and now you have the length, and that's what you kind of want in a secondary group. You want that basketball player mindset of having a different group of style of DBs, and that's what Coach Summerall and Coach JJ have put together uptown with the addition of Hammond now in the fold.
I was trying to pull up his name spelling again to see if I could phonetically say it, because I don't know that I've successfully hit it yet. But yeah, as you mentioned, from Hewitt Trustville, first name Michael, last name Igbenogany. But yeah, NFL ties,
right.
And a guy that they were really excited to get last week from out of state. I think when you look at Landon, he immediately checks a lot of boxes. You talk about the length and the speed and some of his track background and his ball skills when things are thrown his way. You immediately look at him and say, man, he's a pretty thin athlete, but also he is not shy about contact. He's got some wiry strength to him. He's not afraid and fits right in with that Opelousas kind of hit you in the mouth. Defense and program as a whole, where he will come downhill and blow up a screen or help and run support or whatever is asked of him. And so I really like that aspect of his game, watching some of his film the last couple of years, and think that as he gets to that college strength and conditioning program, it's going to be fun. And that for me, as much as I view him right now as a corner, that the more he kind of tacks on and adds to that strength, that he then becomes that much more versatile as a potential safety at the next level as well.
You don't win a state title for Coach Jimmy Zachary if you don't like to get your feet a little bit wet and your pads a little bit dirty. Those DBs are intent to tackle. They did that last season. Landon did it as good as anyone for the cornerback position. And if he does end up making that transition to safety, I think that would be natural the way he is physical and kind of plays without regard for his condition, which is, great for safeties.
We've gone a little bit longer talking about some of these guys. Are we going to get into a rant to end this, or are we saving it? Because I know we
have 2 minutes to go crazy, Jared, and we can cut it off at 30. Anything on your mind that you'd like to share with the Louisiana versus all y'all audience? And let me be the first to congratulate you on picking up this Dixon Publishing sponsorship. But if there's any airing of grievances that you'd like to share with the audience, I think this is your stage.
It is officially Festivus on the Louisiana First All Y'all channel. And yeah, appreciate you. Excited for Julie and I to, both get involved with some of the stuff on the On3 side with the Bengal Tiger, and also be able to incorporate some of this Louisiana versus All Y'all stuff into what they're doing over there with the LSU coverage and recruiting coverage and whatnot. But it's been so interesting, and I feel like we've run into more of it this year than maybe ever before. We're in an era of media where that line is so blurry of what constitutes media. What does that mean? People look at anyone with a social media account as, okay, well, they can be media. And now we're seeing more and more high school programs implement a press pass system. And so it becomes more of a conversation of who they're going to approve and whatnot, and people getting frustrated when they're not. And it's become such a heavy talking point, particularly on the high school level, it seems like recently, that I am very for the idea of high schools finding a way to kind of rein in how packed the sidelines have gotten, and hope that high schools will continue to find more effective ways to implement some of that, because some of it ends up being an additional piece of confusion of what do I have to do school to school, week to week, what are the deadlines, what are the protocols and processes and whatnot. And so as they figure out how to best organize that, I think it can be a positive. At the same time, I think there's something to be said for more opportunities for more voices to get involved, more spotlighting of athletes and athletics, not necessarily the same level of historical gatekeeping that there maybe has been, and just, opportunities for people to get involved. At the same time, I know this is the part.
Having said
This
that,
this is the part where you're excited. I think people need to realize that just because you have a camera, or just because you have a YouTube account, or just because you have an Instagram account or whatever, that there is more involved to being media and to being approved by schools at any level, high school, college, whatever, as being media. There's more to that than just, okay, put out a dope video. This video was so hype, flame emojis, whatever. That the whole dynamic of trying to have some level of approval process for a lot of schools is, yes, there's more opportunities to get involved, but also more opportunities to get involved don't necessarily mean that everyone that has a camera has the same level of journalistic integrity or background experience, any of the other intangibles that go into what it can mean to be a reporter. And the lines are blurry today, and things are gray area after gray area, but there's more to it. And so when you watch the way that certain people say, well, look, I'm media now, I'm on the same level as this person or that person or whatever, but then they show up and they're on the sideline and they're arguing with referees, or they're getting involved in chaotic situations or whatever, whether it be at the game or how they conduct themselves on their platforms. It's something that I think is a very interesting learning process for a lot of parties involved to either figure out, as someone that is striving to be somewhat of a piece of media, to figure out, okay, what does that mean for how I should conduct myself in certain situations, and so on and so forth, to kind of build your reputation, and not assume, okay, I have a camera, so now I'm the same level. Because we've talked about privately too, and this rant is going so long now, and I'm aware. Clearly, it's something I've been thinking a lot about. But there have been people that have gotten involved, and I remember people at the LHSAA that told me, hey, do you know who this person is? Because they just said, hey, I should get credentialed because Jared's credentialed and he's doing stuff on social media. And at that point, I'm someone that came with a track record of 5 or 6 years of working for newspapers, and
that hardware. Where's the hardware?
Had been wherever the hell it is, had been the Louisiana high school sports reporter of the year before and stuff like that. But I left the newspaper and was getting involved in more digital ways. And so it's been interesting, because really since leaving the newspaper, even as we work for notable national networks, I still always feel like, am I going to get approved for this? Am I going to get approved for that? And I never take it for granted, because it's not necessarily the traditional media anymore. But the same time, people kind of pop onto the scene and say, well, I deserve to be this because. And so, yeah, long-winded rant. That's a lot of thoughts that I have kind of flying about. I know you kind of feel similarly about a lot of it, but what's kind of your reaction in the last minute or two that we have?
Yeah, in honor of rest in peace to Kembe Mutombo.
I don't know.
Right
man.
on. You're right.
I want more people involved. I want more people there to spotlight athletics, but I just think people need to realize that it can be a process to build your name brand and reach certain levels of approval, and that it can be, it can be a learning process to learn and grow. We've both handled situations where we've had to grow from it and learn from it over the course of it. But at this point, we've been doing this in pretty professional standings for well over a decade. And so there's something to be said for that doesn't just kind of wake up and hop out of bed in the morning.
We're old and we get to say that for a reason.
Anyway, that's it, man. No one cares about the last 6 minutes or 8 minutes or whatever the hell it is of this, but anyone that stuck with it, appreciate you.
Yeah, we want to hear from you on it.
A lot of great
Name names.
information. A lot of great information. The first half of this, talking about some of those 2027 quarterbacks, an LSU committed offensive lineman, a new Tulane commit at defensive back, and appreciate Sam as always for his time chopping up, talking about all those things. He's Sam Spiegelman. I'm Jarrett Roser. This is Louisiana versus all y'all's Recruit That Boot. And until next time, y'all be well.
See you Saturday, Jarrett.
Yes, sir.